We continue the functions from where we left off. In this lesson, we will examine functions that return values. There may be cases where we need to use the value produced in the functions elsewhere or in the function. We use functions that return values by specifying the type of data we need. These data can be primitive types such as integer, float, str, or they can be returned in complex types such as structures that we will examine in the next lessons. The function that calculates the area of square you are seeing is currently not returning any value. After closing the parenthesis that takes a parameter, after the dash and greater than sign, we can turn it into a function that returns a value by typing the type of value we want it to return. Here we specify that we will return a value of type f64. Subject to, after the operations in the function are finished, we need to write the variable that we will return with the keyword return. It is useful to state that the value it contains will be transmitted, not the variable. Moreover, Rust provides us a convenience at this point. In the last line of the function, it is sufficient to write the name of the variable whose value you want to return without using the keyword return. So the same expression is obtained by simply typing the result variable in our example without using return. Thus, we can only return value with expression. Let's move on to our examples now. When you design a function that takes a float value, negative values can be entered, and taking precautions against this in our function will deflect the content of the lesson. That's why I designed a function that takes integer values here. Let's pass the return value to the variable and print it. We passed our result to the variable and print it with the println macro. Here we could do the printing inside the function, but that's not the main purpose. As I mentioned earlier, we may need to use these values in different functions. It means that we can directly print it without binding it to any variable, depending on our function. When we want to return more than one value, we use tuple data types. You can take a look at that link again. In this way, it is possible to display the entire tuple content by debug printing. If you want, you can access it by entering the indices of individual elements. Finally, let's break down the return tuple and access its values. I mentioned earlier here, it is possible to return complex data types such as structures.